Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Supernatural Substation. I'm your host, Alyne Pustanio, and with me is my incredible co-host, Bernadine Richardson.
Hello,
Say hi.
everybody.
There she is. We're back with another great episode tonight. How are you, Dean?
I'm doing good.
Doing
Yeah,
good?
yeah,
Good.
rain finally stopped over here.
Oh, my God, we got more rain coming in 2 days.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, on Friday they said more rain. It don't matter. New Orleans will flood no matter what. Well, anyway, guys, we do have a guest for you tonight. We do have a one of our dear friends, Reverend Shawn Whittington. He's out of Las Vegas, but y'all might know him from the TV program Eli Roth presents the Legion of Exorcists, which also has Bishop James Long and a couple of other good people on it. But yeah, I've been watching it, or I watched the whole thing, and when I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, it's Shawn, and so we've got him on tonight. He's going to be talking about his experience with that and some of the other things. He's also got a lot going on. He's going from a Reverend Deacon to a priest. So he's going to tell us all about that in a little bit. So thank you for listening, everyone. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. Consider subscribing, share our videos, like it, because it helps us get out there in the algorithm. And we are building our channel all over again. So any help is appreciated. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with our guest, Shawn Whittington, in just a couple of minutes. So stay there, and we'll be right back. Hey, everybody, we're back with our guest tonight, Reverend Shawn Whittington, a good friend, and we're so glad to have him back. Let me just tell y'all a little bit about him. You may have seen him on TV more recently, but I'll just do his little bio here. Shawn is an exorcist and a deacon in the United States Old Catholic Church. He's also in the seminary, this is something new, studying to be a Catholic priest. And he is one of the main core cast members on Eli Roth Presents the Legion of Exorcists, which is great, and I have watched. And he recently has published his second book, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. And he hosts his own show, Shawn Whittington's Paranormal Ministry Live 2.0. He and his wife Sharon, who is also a minister, co-founded Ghost-B-Gone.biz, based in Las Vegas, Nevada. So let's bring in Reverend Shawn. How are
Howdy,
you?
Shawn.
I am doing great. Bernadine and Alyne. It's been a while. I wondered what happened to you two, but I'm so glad you guys are back and so honored that you guys invited me to come and hang out with you guys tonight. And I'm looking forward to just catching up.
I'm excited to have you back. You're one of our favorite people.
I thought about you guys the other night,
You
and I'll
did.
tell you why. I know you both, if memory serves me correctly, one of you's out in the bayou somewhere in Louisiana, and the
That was
other's in New
Dean.
Orleans.
Yeah.
That's
I
me.
still got okay. And there's always something about certain people that I remember. So I remembered you guys were from there. And I had the most interesting case the other day, well, a while ago, where a family had reached out to me and they thought this is a really hardcore, I forget what part of the country in Louisiana they were in, but this was a hardcore Cajun family out in the bayou. And the family suspected the father of being a loup-garou. And so they had him locked in a shed out back, and they had electricity out there and a computer and a monitor and all that. And I ended up spending probably, I want to say 1 o'clock in the morning till probably till sunup with him on a Zoom or Skype call, if I remember correctly, where we could see each other, just listening to some CDs and talking, because he wanted me to watch him turn into a Lugaro. Well, he never turned, but I thought that was one of the most interesting evenings I'd spent with somebody, and the whole family was on board with it. And I thought about you two, wondering where's the supernatural substation gals when you need them, because it was just probably one of the strangest cases that I had worked on the internet, and it was right in your guys' backyard. You guys get much of that? I know you guys are
Yeah.
probably in one of the most supernaturally charged states and cities in the
Yeah, yeah.
country.
Well,
Do you
you're talking about people who think that they're werewolves and stuff? Yeah,
just the whole variety of you guys have it all there?
we
Yeah, we have
do.
vampires, we have werewolves, we have Bigfoot,
Sorcerers. Yeah,
Rougarou.
we have what do you call them? Skinwalkers. We got devil babies. We got Marie Laveau and all the voodoo. We just like well, the river, the Mississippi River, and we're like right almost in the middle of the country, so it all drains down
Yeah.
here. So we get everything. We get the dog man, the werewolf, the this, the that. But I was surprised actually. One of them has got one sort of I don't want to say cult, but one sort of like a little demi-monde is the vampire one. It had gone away for a while, like it was big in the '90s, all around Interview with the Vampire and all that, and then it kind of petered out, and now it's back with everybody and everybody that thinks they're a vampire and everybody some think they're vampire wolf people, so but yeah, I mean it's been known for like this in New Orleans and out there where Dean is forever. I mean just as
Yeah.
long as it was since colonial times, and I get I kind of think it's like we had the atmosphere of the geography, like out in the swamps, and the untamedness of it, kind of just lent itself to folklore and things that these colonial people brought over from Europe. They brought all of their folklore. So but now everybody thinks there's something, right, Nina?
That's
I don't know.
true.
Hmm. But I would have been disappointed, like if he didn't turn into a werewolf. It was like keep me on the phone all night, and then you don't even, uh,
Here's the thing: I kind of knew going in that he probably wasn't going to turn into a werewolf in
right.
front of my eyes. I was
Hmm.
more concerned um, with demonic possession, to be honest with you, because sometimes demonic possession can manifest and look that way,
Hmm.
and a person can behave very animalistic. And I knew that his whole family. I mean, I wanted to come through for them because the whole
Mm.
family believed there was something wrong with him, and so if he was willing to stay up with me all night and listen to some music and chat and visit, I'm there for him, and it was important enough to stay the course with him, and he
Yeah.
was just the most gracious, nicest person to just sit and chat with. And I'll tell you what he did do. He got me hooked on what's the name of the group? He had probably played 4 or 5 complete CDs of this group uh, on a CD player there, and I listened to every single CD from the first song to the last song of a group. I think they're called the Meters, and I know that one of the a famous family down there in New Orleans
Yeah.
for
They,
how
ne-
funk
they
music is.
It's the
Neville Brothers,
Nevilles,
yeah.
yeah, the Neville brothers, yeah, and they had actually the meters were great, really. They originally called themselves the Funky Meters back in the day, and then
Yeah.
they just shortened it to the Meters, and they actually that's the only really Mardi Gras music that I like to listen to that they come up with. But they had I cannot they had they all asked for you. And you know the song, they went on down to the Audubon Zoo and they all asked for you. That's when they hit. I'm pretty sure that's. I don't. I hope it's the meters. I think it is. It's. They're like a big deal. So you sat through like 2 whole CDs, huh?
Oh no, I mean more than that. I mean, I want to say he had several, and he may have threw some Neville Brothers in there too. But uh,
Hmm.
I want to
Well,
say
he's doing pretty
probably
good
4 or
for
5.
being locked in the shed.
Yeah, he was all set up. And he said, my family makes me sleep here at night because of things that I've done late at night, sleepwalking or having other things take over me and stuff. Um, but it was an interesting evening. But he got me hooked. I haven't bought a CD yet, but he got me hooked up by the time we were done. And I said, I
Mm.
think you're going to be okay. And I left. I told my wife, I said, I've got to get some of the CDs of the meters and start
Yeah,
listening to the rest
if
of
you
this.
got Spotify or any kind of, radio streamer, you find them on there. And that they have a song called "Hey Pocky Way," and that's like my favorite Mardi Gras song. "Hey Pocky Way." They were all like the Nevilles are like a big family, and they had Charmaine Neville, the sister, and then they had Aaron Neville, who everybody knows. And then they had they just had a big musical family, and all around the same time was Dr. John. He played with them, and Rockin' Doopsie. All these people were like they like hit around the same time, and it was all that New Orleans, neighborhood music basically, but it was all that music. So they all, all got kind of popular right around the same time, so everybody knows who they are. And there were just so many of them that they had so much talent that they were in other bands and, different things. And they played, Dr. John played with him, they played with him, and all kind of stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, they're a good band. So at least he's got musical taste. Like, what does a
Yeah.
werewolf listen to? He's listening to the funky meter. But I want to know, like, so we're talking about it and all that, and you touched on demonic possession, and so why, what led the family to believe and him to believe that he could be the Loup-Garou, even if there was no like physical change? I mean, what led up to him coming to them coming to that conclusion? I mean, was it
Well,
only until? Go ahead.
they got into some. I if memory serves me correctly, they got into an altercation or an argument or some type of feud with what they suspected was a Bayou witch that lived nearby, and they thought that the Bayou witch had put a curse on the family, and mainly him. And so he was doing things. I believe there was some sleepwalking involved, and some really uh, adverse reactions to his alcoholism, which manifested in him acting very animalistic late at night. I mean, they were catching him running around the bayou naked and bringing home animals and doing just all kinds of weird, crazy things. And so they had children, so they were worried about them, and he was too. And so they locked him up, and at night they locked him up in this shed. But he had a refrigerator out there and something to cook on, and he had electricity and a computer and a TV and all sorts of
The
stuff. But
high
they had
class
him,
werewolf.
yeah, and they had him locked in this shed. And so we just,
Sweet.
you know, I brought in a pot of coffee in here and a couple of tall cold drinks and got
Mhm.
comfortable and had him up on the screen, and it was either Zoom or Skype. It wasn't Facebook live
Mhm.
chat, but we just sat there and chatted, listened to music and talked, and it was just a really interesting night. And then I had remembered thinking of you two, knowing where he was at. And did you guys get a chance to enjoy Mardi Gras at all this year?
You go with that one.
Yeah, no, I didn't go anywhere this year. It's kind of crazy on this end at this time with
Mhm.
people shooting
Yeah.
everybody up. So,
Yeah,
we,
neither city is very safe for stuff like
no.
that. I'm not I'm not a Mardi Gras fan, but I like the music, and I always said I've got pictures of me like 5 years old, frowning because I'm standing out waiting for parade because my parents are making me. I just never have been. Uh, it's when you live where it is, it's an inconvenience if you don't want to do it. In other words, like you can't really do anything else because they close. Everything is closed on Mardi Gras Day, but they close so many streets, and if you're trying to go anywhere, um, you can't. You got to make like contingency plans to avoid the parade, because one time, and this wasn't even in New Orleans. This was in on the North Shore of Lake Pontchartrain in Mandeville. Some place that took me during, any other time 10 minutes to get to, took me almost an hour to traverse that same distance because of traffic. So I'm just not a I'm just not a parade person. If I lived on a route, that would be good. That would feel completely different because you have somewhere to go to the bathroom. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is the biggest thing, because Benny Grunch and the Bunch, that's another New Orleans band. They came up with that song "Ain't Nowhere to Pee" on Mardi Gras Day, and there just ain't. There just ain't. I mean, seriously, not for women. It's easier for guys, but it's great. I understand if people haven't experienced it and all. I mean, it's great, but not for me. Yeah, I've had enough of that. And when my daughter got old enough to go by herself, I was like, yes, I don't have to go anymore.
I remember
So.
20 years ago, I was down there for a concrete convention, and the gentleman I was working for at the time, I was selling diamond saw blades for him. He used to manufacture them, and we stayed in a little old haunted hotel down in the heart of the French Quarter, and it was quite an interesting situation, quite an interesting time. We spent 10 days there. We arrived like 2 days before New Year's Eve, and then stayed there for 10 days while walking from our hotel to this convention hall for this big concrete convention, and then back to our hotel. But he was, we had different interests at the time. So when we were off work, he went and did his thing, and then I would just go out and walk. You probably can't do this today because I'm going back 20 years. But back then, I went out walking around the outskirts of the French Quarter, trying to find old, very picturesque, abandoned-looking type locations to do a little ghost hunting, a little ghost busting, taking some photos and stuff. And I had a really weird situation happen to me where I thought I was being stalked by either just a very creepy person, or perhaps I never say never, and never say that I don't believe in a certain thing with all the things I've seen and experienced. But I reached out to many people like you two that live in your area, asking if they thought I was stalked by a vampire. Because one night, some really weird gentleman that was all by himself followed me it was so creepy. I went back to my hotel room, but everywhere I turned down a street heading back to my hotel room, there he was, like a block ahead of me, just standing there, kind of in the shadows, watching me. Very tall, extremely skinny, white as white can be, pale individual, wearing like period clothes from like maybe 50 years before that. Not like back in the day, but like maybe 50 years before that. And everywhere I turned, there he was. And it really creeped me out bad. And so I don't know. What do you guys think? I think he was a vampire?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I think, well, I can tell you that Bernadine and I had an experience at one of the vampire balls. They have endless nights, it takes place in different cities across the world, really. But we were with a couple of guys who were there to do an interview with the guy who runs it. And later I found out there was like some animosity between him and a guy over a girl. So Dean and I got swept up into this. We're like, yeah, we're going to Endless Night. So we go there with them, and she and I were behind them. One of the guys was carrying a camera, and the guy in front kept saying, there he is. Let's go over there and talk to him. And we'd follow, they'd go, and we were looking at the guy. And if you looked away for a minute, he wasn't, when they got there, and I'm not talking like it was, 50 feet away across a dance floor, he was right there. Then he was gone. Then we look up, and he was upstairs. And this is at the House of Blues, so it's not easy to navigate that with the crowds of people. I'm like, and Dean and I are like, he's not supposed to be there. He was down here just now. Then he was upstairs. Then they went up. They went up there. I think we stopped following him at some point, or stopped. Didn't want to go up, but we saw them looking for him, and he's down behind us somewhere else. And then he ended up in front of the stage, and I'm like, I'm like, there's serious coven stuff going on, and
Yeah,
that
absolutely. And the
there's a
voodoo stuff
whole.
too.
Well, with the vampires, there's what you can, like, you can go to endless nights if you buy tickets and you want to dress up, but there's this whole back of the house type thing, background thing that goes on with more of a coven feeling, and there are rituals and everything that people that they don't do in the public. And this guy has a reputation, or had a reputation, for being the, well, I mean, and he owns it. He's like the leader of the whole vampire coven. So we weren't surprised at all. We were like, look at that. Dean and I, and Dean's like, and I'm like, yeah, well, he's like, they couldn't pin him down all night. And I was like, well, that was pretty good to watch, but and then the other thing with the voodoo, well, obviously, voodoo, I mean, you brought up a bayou witch cursing somebody. I mean, but obviously voodoo and hoodoo, which are not exactly the same thing, but yeah, they're rife here. I mean, it's so easy. A lot of people will, get mad at people if you live in, like, I don't know, St. Louis, and you get aggravated with somebody and all, you're just like, I'm not going to talk to them anymore. And I'm not, but down here, it's like, I'm going to go, I'm going to go lay a trick, or I'm going to hot foot that person or whatever. There's always been this, oh yeah, well, I'm going to go do voodoo. And it's just easy. It's at the fingertips,
Yeah, I remember when I checked into the hotel with my former boss. He got a real good deal on it, and it was a hotel that had been like around since, I want to say Civil War times, or maybe even older than that, and they kept it up pretty good. But after we checked in, and I was turning around to head towards the stairs and head up to the room, a woman who I thought worked there, and I'm still not sure if she worked there or not. She told me on my way to my room, don't leave. The weirdest thing, don't leave your hair in your hairbrush.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was weird for somebody to say to me that I didn't even know. And I just kind of smiled and nodded my head and said, okay. And I went up to my room, and it just, that stuck with me. And I didn't take it out of the hairbrush and throw it in I was taking it out of my comb and out of my brush before I went and stick it into my pocket.
In your pocket, have it in your pocket. It's a purse, put it down.
I didn't know what to think, and the hotel was haunted. I had somebody turning the water on in the bathroom all night long, and if I opened up the window, I would wake up and the window would be closed because there's no AC in these old hotels, and it was just really, really interesting city.
Well, it's because it's 300, 300 years piled on top of, itself. I mean, that little area of the French Quarter, it's like, I think 11 blocks long by 6 blocks deep, and it's not that big, but everything happened there from the minute the city was founded till now. It's just that square almost of, that was the city at one point. They had forts on each of the 4 corners when they had just, log cabins and stuff that they were living in and trying to pioneer their way through all of this. And it's on top of each other. And not only that, places that got built like coming into like the 30s, 40s, when they followed the turn of the century, they used whatever space they could. So under a lot of those buildings, there's burials, there's people being buried because they had all those yellow fever, epidemics, cholera, you name it, they had it. And you may hear my dog bark. And they would take the bodies and they would put them by the cemetery and just stack them up, and they could get buried in mass graves. But sometimes they just buried people wherever, like as it was on the edge of the city, just bury them in a mass pit. They buried them on the riverside, which is the Batchors, which are at that time was mud going down into the river. They had a bunch of burials there. They buried them. I mean, there's a whole cemetery was covered up at what is it, St. Peter and Dauphine. There was the original cemetery back from the 1700s where they started burying. It's under a building now, so like you can't really go anywhere that isn't haunted in New Orleans. That you're not going to have some kind of activity, and then the whole atmosphere just adds to it, But honestly, the guy following you, absolutely, that was a vampire.
It was crazy. It was, and it made me not go back out for a couple of days. I stayed in because I
I'm
figured
glad you didn't.
he knows where I'm at. He saw what hotel I went into, but it was the weirdest thing. I remember being just taking some photos. I went to really. I probably wasn't even in the French Quarter anymore because there was like really dark areas of the city. And then I was taking some photos of a location, and when I first saw him, and it was just the way he was behaving and staring at me. I decided to head back, and I remember the first street I turned on to head back to the hotel. There he was, a block ahead of me, and I just saw him behind me. I turned down another street. There he was again, and that's two or three times he pulled that maneuver on me. I thought that is just
enough.
that's just that's
It's
just not
enough.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it doesn't just have to be New Orleans. If you look online, I mean, there's whole like there's a lot of people who've had experiences like that in other places, but in other like areas where there's like a concentration of like one was in Key West, I think. Some couple got followed, and I just weird, yeah, because there's people who think that they are, and then there's people who really are, and it's hard for. I mean, I believe in the supernatural, and these things are objectively real. And the vampire is the most dangerous of them all. Like you can do a lot of stuff to drive off a werewolf. You can do a lot of stuff to get rid of a ghost. You can even do stuff with zombies, but a vampire, you have to completely annihilate it. Completely. Like, and I'm sure you know this, like burn it to just scatter the ashes in water, or it's going to come back. So it's like the most dangerous one. And people come here all the time and they have the same experience you had, just, being followed around. Weird. Two girls saw one on top of the roof of the building, the Cabildo, next to the St. Louis Cathedral, and it was following them through the quarter, and then they lost it, or they thought they lost it around Jackson Square. This was on the Travel Channel, and they thought they lost it like around Jackson Square, and the girl looks up and says, "Oh my God!" And he was up on the roof of the Cabildo building, looking down at them. It's like, how the hell did you get? Well, that's when you go back to your hotel. That's when you just you did the wise thing and went back to your hotel.
I had to weigh out my options. Do I go back to this? Do I go back to my hotel room early that's haunted, where I got to worry about leaving my hair in my in my brush, or do I stay out here,
Yeah,
acting like a silly tourist in the middle of the night? I had no business being out that late anyhow by myself. But I never forgot that.
But I'm sure you've had stuff that's you've encountered stuff that's just matched it or overtaken that effect since you've been involved in deliverance and everything.
I have a question,
The next time, sure.
Dean's got a question.
I had an investigation one time, and I don't normally go out when people, say they think they're possessed. But I had a guy that didn't know if he was possessed or if he was schizophrenic. Well, I worked in a mental hospital for quite a few years, and the doctor said, well, we can't diagnose possession because I've seen people do everything but turn their head backwards, and it's just not a diagnosis. You can't do that. So they medicate them. And I ran across people, before I get to the investigation part, I ran across quite a few, well, one lady in particular I had a feeling she was possessed because we had her tied down in the hospital room with leather straps because she was violent, and I mean, she actually made me bleed. Well, she didn't sleep for a whole week, and her eyes were like white, glassy. But she'd lift her head, and I had to stay with her, and you have to stay at arm's length away when you're a mental health technician. So she was telling me things that nobody could have known but me, you know, and
Mm.
they say that's one of the signs is that a demon will know things about you that nobody else will know. So, you know, I had that incident, but back to the investigation part, I wouldn't have normally went, but the guy lived alone and he was getting beat the hell up and having to be put in the emergency room, and he lived alone.
Mm.
People would have to call an ambulance for him, and they kept medicating him, telling him he was schizophrenic, but he was on the edge of it. He didn't know if he was possessed or if he should stop taking his medicine or keep taking his medicine. He was confused. But he said every time he'd go to try to make his confirmation, because he was Catholic, that he'd see demons on the altar at church, and somebody in his family or close friend would get in a bad accident or something bad would happen to that person.
Mhm.
So his family stopped going around him, and his friends stopped hanging around with him because they were afraid. So we did go. And my question is, I sat closer to him. My team member said, hell no, we're sitting in the kitchen. But I had one guy that had a handheld camera on him, and I actually seen this guy's face change. Like he laid down, he was like a real soft-spoken guy when we got there. He sat down, and I sat across from him and started asking him questions, which I don't directly ask a demon a question. I asked the guy a question about what was going on. So he crossed his arms and he laid down and closed his eyes. I didn't ask him to do that. He just did it. But while he was talking, his voice started to change. His facial features started to change. Then he started speaking as the demon, like the demon says, and he'd tell me what it was saying. Well, I had an EVP recorder at his head. So when I played it back later, I could actually hear something telling him what to say. And he'd say it, to answer in my questions. So the voice I heard, I didn't play it. I was going to play it for Alyne, but I said no, because it was spooky enough to me. It sounded like, the voice sounded like the recordings, the real recordings from the Exorcist Part 1 that was supposed to be of a boy that was possessed. That was the voice I heard in the audio. But I actually never told the guy I had that. It freaked me out really bad. Well, I called Alyne. I threw my headset down. I said, oh, hell no, I ain't doing this. When I put my rosary on, called Alyne. I called another guy that we have as a mutual friend that does astral projection. So the guy said, okay, I'll do astral projection, see what's going on, because I was that worried about the guy, which I was trying to help, but I didn't tell him I was trying to help him from afar, from a distance, because I didn't want the demon to know, but of course it does know. So in a dream of mine I had a couple of days later, something dark spirit throws me up at the corner of my room. I'm in the corner looking down at my body, myself, and I see the thing, and it tells me he's mine. Well, I never told the guy that's doing the astral projection, I never told him what the demon told me. So he goes through the link through me and through the guy, And he says he was getting near the couch where the guy was, and the guy had a really big bad demon. He wasn't going to tell me the name, but he said the demon told him when he seen his spirit, he's mine.
Mm.
So I never told the guy because I was worried the guy would commit suicide.
Yeah.
You know, if he knew he was actually possessed, because I couldn't help him through a possession. That's not what I do. But I did have evidence, you know, pertaining to that. So what I was going to do is get a priest to come to his home and help him. Well, when I called, the nearest one that would have helped him didn't go to people's houses anymore because it was too dangerous and he was elderly. He wanted me to bring the guy to him. And I told him, I said, I'm not putting that dude in my car because I don't think we're going to make it there. And the guy didn't have a vehicle. All he had was a bicycle and it was out of town. I said, no, that can't happen. I even reached out to Jesse Duplantis, a minister here. He was on TV for a while. Nobody would ever answer me or help me. So I just had to let it go, you know, because I didn't want bad things to happen to me and my family and friends trying to help him with something I had no way of doing. Because that was way before like demonologists were coming out, like, you know, you and Jeremy Leonard and all. I had no one to call to help the guy out. So what happens when we as investigators find things like this, you know, when we reach out to people like you, do you go to the person's house or you just contact them through phone?
Well, I usually, me personally, if I can get there, absolutely. That's the ideal thing. But first, there's some over many years of doing this, I've learned that there's just some rules to go by that, in the long run, help you out. And I usually send out an intake form first, and I ask that everybody in that family get together as a family unit and fill out this form. Usually 99.9% of the time, now this isn't always the case, but usually if a person comes to me and says, I think I'm possessed, chances are they're not. Very rarely will you find a possessed individual say that. The demon won't allow them to say that. Family members may suspect it and say it, or the person may be under extreme oppression and be able to describe what they're going through. And it's very similar to if they're under a severe haunting, but it's more severe than that. But if they're possessed, usually they don't say that. But after this family has filled out this intake form and sent it back to me, now I usually have already conducted a phone interview. My wife sometimes has also conducted an interview with that same person. We've talked. We get the intake form back. Now, many times we lose the client there because they just, for whatever reason, don't feel like sitting down and taking the 2.5, 3 hours it takes the whole family to sit down and get this intake form. So that usually solves the problem for us, that maybe what they were claiming was happening wasn't as severe or wasn't really happening for them not to want to take the time to fill out this intake form. But if they fill out that form and send it back to us, I read it, my wife reads it, we talk about it again. Sometimes there's a follow-up interview, but if we decide that we need to go there, we try our very best to go. Now, most of the times it's not in our town here. So getting there is very, very difficult. So now I've got to try and find somebody within their area that I trust that can get to them. Or I try to get arrangements for this with the family to get this person to a qualified deliverance minister or exorcist, um, And, if they can get them on hallowed ground, that's the best. But I try to, one way or another, either get the right individual to that person or get that person to the right individual. And you talk about the mental illness part. Many people reach out to me, and I do know in my heart of hearts, I get my spidey senses go up in talking to them, and I realize they very well could be, at the very least, extremely oppressed or possessed. But before they've gotten to me, they've already seen a psychologist or psychiatrist who is now they're under their care, and this doctor is prescribing the medication. Um, my hands are usually tied at that point if they are under the care of a physician. I may reach out to the physician, and sometimes, very rarely, sometimes they may be on board with me and think there might be something more going on and work with me a little bit, but usually that never happens. And
Mm.
your hands are tied. Legally, there really isn't much more you can do then. And I'll tell you, the last 2 years of my mother's life and the last year of my father's life, may they rest in peace, they were in these uh, care facilities, medical care facilities. And I would go in there wearing either my Ghost-B-Gone t-shirt or a Ghost-B-Gone hat, or sometimes in my collar. And I would get people that worked there coming up to me afterwards saying, you really ought to come here some night when my shift supervisor isn't around, and I'll let you walk around here and do some investigating, because there's some weird stuff going on, and we suspect many of the people that have been hospitalized here with schizophrenia or mental illnesses such that we believe there's much more going on than that illness. And I agree. So I've seen people that have been clinically diagnosed with severe mental illnesses that I just suspect there's more going on there than
Mhm.
that. And it's
Mhm.
just sad that there's really not a whole lot you can do for them. I've had to, just like you in that one particular circumstance, I've had to cut a lot of clients loose that my hands were tied and I couldn't proceed any further. It's sad.
Yeah, and Dean's not telling you everything either. I mean,
I bet,
he
yeah.
he would he was being sexually abused by whatever this thing was. So it took the form of an incubus and a succubus. And I remember Dean telling me that the voice she heard over his voice was a female voice. And you remember, Dean, they were particularly focused on you. They said, she knows she needs to go. And all this was on EVP. She didn't just because Dean's tough. She don't run out just because of one, one demon happened to be caught in the EVP. But I'm reminding her now. It was not. It was serious, and they knew. I mean, it knew what would result or what could result, and it just was. It also tore up Bibles, beat him with the Bible.
Yeah.
And it was just, it had him. And he was living in a VA facility, which there's an atmosphere for you. I mean, there's a lot of depression, a lot of PTSD, a lot of mental illness, and these, they feed on that
Yeah.
energy. But this was one of
And
the,
she would call sometimes, and I'd say, "Hey, you need to turn your TV down. I can't hear," because I'd hear screaming in the background, like lots of people screaming.
Mhm.
And I said, "Turn your TV down." He's like, "I don't have anything on."
Yeah. They did not want anybody. And she said, he said that he could go into church, um
Mhm.
but up until the point where liturgy goes into the transubstantiation part, up until the point he could be in church, and then they drove him out of there before the presence, before the transubstantiation took place in the host. And people say, well, demons can't get in church. Yes, they can go in church. They can go in church. They just cannot be around the presence of Christ. When he incarnates in that host, flesh and blood, they can't be in there. And so they would run
Interesting
him
you
out of the
say
church.
that. I was just, you and I are must be psychically connected here because I was just about to say that's why
Mm-hmm.
it's so important when you work cases like this. If you, in your heart of hearts, really honestly believe that this person is under demonic possession, they can't be around the presence of Christ. That's why if you can get a devoutly religious um, person in there that knows either an ordained exorcist or a highly trained deliverance minister, you can get them in the presence of this person, and that person has the discernment and the ability to be able to allow themselves to be used as a channel, if you will, to
Mm-hmm.
allow the Holy Spirit to come through. It's over. The game is over. But
Mm-hmm.
very often, people try to help that aren't. They're not as strong in their faith that they claim, and the demonic know that also. And they also show up many times to work these cases, and they're not in a state of grace. It's so important to
Yep.
go to confession, go to church, go to mass, receive communion. It's important to do all of that stuff before you even go work these cases. And
Right, because if you're in
I may
any
ask
kind of
what happened to that gentleman.
oh, we don't.
What?
What happened to him?
I don't know.
She
I
couldn't
had,
because she couldn't take it. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
because I went back like it was like months later because he wouldn't answer his telephone. I was trying to check on him, so I actually went there to his apartment, and he opened a crack in the door, put his foot in the crack, and I could barely see him. And he said, "I no longer need your services." I said, "Well, I'm here just to check on you, see if you're okay." He said, "I'm fine." And he slammed the door and wouldn't open it after that. So, I mean, I had to let him go. I couldn't keep on.
Well,
I wouldn't even
Mm,
listen to it. Dean told me everything, but I was like, I don't want to hear it because I don't want it on me.
yeah.
I don't want. She did the right thing by going to the rosary and everything like that. It's like, no, I don't need to hear it. If it scared you, it sure as heck is going to scare me. I'm like, no, I don't need that. But that was one of the, yeah. I mean, it was the things she were telling me. She was telling me about it were just astonishing. But they can't stand the not only the presence of Christ, but if you call on his mother, then that's it, because she comes and they're so frightened of her. That's why the rosary and I find, well, I know that the Latin rites are actually more effective than the New Order rites. So the old Roman rite in the ecclesiastical Latin, they can't face that, and they want to run away. But she could have endangered herself doing anything more for that guy. You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
yeah. But so tell us about. I read that in your bio that you're you're studying to be a Catholic priest. You'll
Yeah, I
become.
actually met Bishop James Long on the set of Eli Roth Presents the Legion of
Yeah, I
Exorcists.
want to hear all about that too.
Oh, awesome.
Um, I'm sure, and I know you're an author, so you probably know who Joni Mayhan is. She's another author like you. You guys write brilliant paranormal novels.
Hmm.
She got a phone call from somebody one day out of the blue. She doesn't know why they called her, but this gentleman called her one day. Said he was a producer working on a show about demonic possession and exorcism. Did she know anybody that they should probably speak to? Well, she said the only person I could think of was you, so I gave him your name and number, and the rest is, as they say, history. But this happened like before the pandemic when I got that phone call, and the show didn't air until last June 2023. So we worked on it a long time. And but I was in LA for 2 weeks, met Bishop James Long, and after we had worked together for a couple of weeks, this whole time I'm wondering, how did this land in my lap, and why? There has to be a reason. Something's going to happen, and I don't know what that is yet. But there's a reason why this show got landed in my lap, and I was just waiting for the sign. I didn't know what it was going to be, and then he comes walking into my trailer one day after we got done shooting, and he says, "You got a minute? I'd like to talk to you." And he's got this little kind of he's up to something look on his face, and I'm all, well, Bishop Long, what's going on? Yeah, let's talk. He goes, I just wanted you to know that in the last 2 weeks of working with you, I've learned two things about you. One, you've got a pure heart, and two, I think you would make a great priest. Have you ever thought
Mhm.
about being a priest? And I didn't tell him at the time. I waited a couple of weeks before I told him. But when I was growing up, my mother, may she rest in peace, was one of the most devoutly religious people I've known in my life, and very spiritual. And she used to say the same thing to me. I think when you grow up, you ought to be a priest. And I always thought that was the craziest, funniest thing anybody ever would say to me. And here, when he was saying that to me in this trailer, I could see my mother's face on his face. And she was Brazilian. She had a very strong Portuguese accent. This woman with a strong Portuguese accent is coming through his mouth, talking to
Oh,
me and saying that to me. I knew
Mhm.
right then. It hit me like a bolt of lightning. That was why I
Mhm.
got that. And I
Mhm.
told him, well, I didn't give him an answer. Then I said I would go home, talk to my wife, and I'd get back to him. But I already knew the answer was going to be yes.
Mhm.
So right after we got done filming, I entered the seminary, and I had to, be interviewed by the Council of Bishops and go through a lot of other stuff to be accepted. But I got accepted, and I'm finishing that up. I'm actually going to fly to Illinois next weekend. I'll be there from the 14th through the 17th at a place called Todd Hall Retreat Center, where I will go through two ceremonies. I will go through the ceremony to be ordained to the priesthood, and I'm also going to be taking my perpetual vows as a full brother Benedictine in the old Catholic Benedictines of Immaculate Mary. So I'll be a Benedictine monk and an ordained priest on that weekend. So that's a big weekend coming up. The next time we all talk, you'll be calling me Father Shawn. Isn't that something? So my mother got her way finally after all, from the other side, she pulled some strings
Of
and
course, when
finally
the
got her
time was
way.
right. Yeah, when the time was right. Well, a lot of people don't know that when people think Catholic priests, they think celibacy, but there is a whole acceptance into the church of married men who want to enter the priesthood. And remain married. So a lot of people say, I don't know that much about it. I know that's what because you're not going to get divorced to become a Benedictine monk. So you're going to be married clergy basically, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. The
yeah,
United
that
States.
it's
That's what drew me. That's what attracted me to. Well, I did first before I called him. I did some research on the United States Old Catholic Church and the Old Catholic movement, and I just found it. Everything about that appealed to me. They didn't mind that I was, uh, in my early 60s. They didn't mind that I was married.
you're not in
Um,
your early 60s.
yeah, I
No,
just turned
you don't even look
54.
it. Oh my gosh.
no.
No.
So
No, you don't look your
it
age.
just everything just seemed to work out. That I met him and
Yeah, that is wild. Well,
yeah.
welcome because we need priests. Catholics need priests. We really. Are you gonna? Do you do? Have you learned Latin? Are you gonna be doing Latin right?
I
Traditional
don't.
mass.
I don't know. I'm been part of my graduation is the last month and a half. I want to say I've been actually practicing masses here and filming them and then sending them to my superiors for
Mm-hmm.
them to view and critique and tell me you should be doing this or doing that or. And so I have a little altar made up in my office here, and I have all the stuff I need, and I actually film myself doing practice masses, but I'll probably be doing at least assisting on two and probably presiding over one mass while I'm there after I'm ordained that weekend that I'm there. But no, it's if I knew Latin, I could do the masses that I've been practicing in Latin. The mass I'm doing is out of the Roman Missal,
Yeah.
but no, I don't know Latin. So, and it's funny because I see the pages. One page has everything in Latin, and one page it's all translated back into English.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
no, I don't. I don't know Latin. I don't know how That might be the next step, but I actually turned the page on all the paranormal stuff when I entered the seminary because I knew that it was going to be hard work, which it was.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had anything else going on at the time, it would just be, take away from all the energy I needed to put into and the focus I needed to put into the priesthood. So I turned the page on all that, but I didn't really know coming up as this weekend is approaching. I don't really know what my holy orders are going to be. And my wife is like, well, I know you want to start a parish and all that, but there's a reason why this happened to you, and you have a gift when it comes to exorcism, and you probably should plan on continuing down that road, go into deeper into theology and demonology, and because what I've learned that I didn't know since entering the seminary is um, just overwhelming. Just when you think you know it all, you've seen it all, you've heard it all.
Yeah.
The seminary has taught me that and here I am, baptized Catholic, went through, confirmation, been Catholic all my life, and here going into the Catholic seminary after being ordained through a Christian university, it was just what I didn't know was just extremely eye-opening and jaw-dropping, and so I probably will continue delve further into exorcism.
You
Because
have you heard of Father Chad Ripperger? He's
yes, I watch them all the time. Yeah,
he is just he's so matter of fact about it. I mean, he's seen it all, and he just stands up there and says, "Yeah, they'll do, they'll do X, Y, Z," and he's like, and everybody's mouth is just like, and everybody's like, "They're doing what?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've seen him do this." He's so matter of fact, but it's so weighty. Everything that he says, I mean, you can learn so much from just listening to him. He is,
absolutely.
I mean, he's like exorcistic. And then there's Father Altman. I don't know if you've heard of Father James Altman, but he kind of went
Probably
rogue.
know him by his face, but the name doesn't sound familiar.
He's redheaded, and he is the one who came out with the. I'm not going to go into politics, but I know he really hit. People knew who he was when he said you couldn't be a Democrat. You couldn't. What is it? You can't be a Catholic and a Democrat. Okay, so he came out with that, and everybody
Yeah.
piled on. But that's his personality. He got in trouble and stuff like that. I'm just saying that there's a lot of mavericks like in in half of the church right now. There's a lot of people
Absolutely.
who are, standing on the traditions and the old ways. And we don't want to get into a whole religious discussion, but I'm glad to see people like you, making it their life, to do it and going to it, because the Catholic Church is just bleeding members. I mean, they're just losing people left and right. But apparently, the Latin Mass is burgeoning and gaining in popularity. And there's just so much going on, though. But the Church is trying to cancel, quote unquote, and stop the Latin Masses from being being done. I know that they're actively trying to do that. So I just thought I would ask you if you knew Latin.
You know me, now that you've planted the seed, and you're not the first person who said that to me, I probably will,
Hmm.
as I delve further into the theology and of demonology and all of that, and I've got all of these files upon files that Bishop Long. I mean, he is. Uh, I thought I've either assisted on or taken authority over, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 50 exorcisms. Bishop, times that, probably times five, and that's what Bishop Long has under his belt.
Oh yeah,
And
he's
I
been out
think
there
I've
for
got,
years. Yeah.
yeah, he sent me so many files and
Hmm.
recordings and things to study that it's just I'm just waiting to dive into that after I get ordained, because I've kind of put, like I said, I put that on the back
Hmm.
burner, but it's just so extensive that we'll see
Well,
we'll see where that path takes me when I go down it.
well, I'm glad you took it. I know that. the Anneliese Michel case, the German case, and that they based the exorcism of Emily Rose, I think, on it. And there the recordings of some of the the interaction between her, the demons, and the priest are on YouTube, and they talked specifically. The demons talked specifically, not only about things that had changed after Vatican II and that they were working for other changes, but they also said they wanted to get rid of the Latin because the ecclesiastical Latin, which is different from like the Roman Latin that was used like in the Roman Empire, it's different, and it hurts them. That when y'all pray Latin to them, it physically hurts them. And it is the language of the church, and the words that y'all are using hurt them. And that's why they don't want somebody in there like Ripperger, or maybe you when you learn it, because Latin is not easy. I barely made that. My brother had to learn it, but they didn't. I passed over. It's good. I don't have to learn Latin, but he did. But they say when an exorcist comes in there and can use that old ritual and uses the Latin on them, that physically hurts them. Like they scream, they want to go away. So for what it's worth, I mean, maybe you might want to study it, eventually. But that was something interesting because I didn't get to do the Latin Mass. My brother got the tail end of it right before Vatican II, so I never experienced it except seeing it like on TV and stuff like that. So I never got to experience it. But that's something interesting that came out of the actual demon mouth. So, but tell us about the TV show though. Because obviously it took you a long time to film all that, but they did a few of your actual cases. I saw that they had a guy that reenacted you.
Yeah.
Did you just tell them, like, or and they dramatized the cases, or did you have cases while the filming was going on, and did they adapt them? How did that work?
Many Skype and Zoom interviews with the writers and the producers and the director, and they would just be taking notes and recording me and listening to me, and I would just tell them stories. I probably told them far more stories than just the 4 they chose, but they chose 4 of my stories and had them in season 1. Mm-hmm. And Steve Crawford is the actor that they got to portray me. Mm-hmm. You couldn't ask for a nicer guy and a more talented guy. I mean, my wife says the same thing. She's like, he looks nothing like you. What's funny is that when he got the gig, here's a guy with a blonde mustache, blonde hair, brown eyes. And he went and saw one of my shows for his audition, and he went and he bought a priest collar. Aww. And he had his wife dye his hair brown, and he put on a fake brown beard and put blue contact lenses in for his audition. Oh, and wow. He wasn't the first choice, but something happened to the first actor that they had chosen. I don't know what happened, but something happened to the first actor. It was very close, and he just got edged out slightly. But then something happened to that first actor, and then they came back and offered it to Steve. But the role meant a lot to him, and he put everything into it. But
he did do a great job.
It took a long time, and it took a long time for it finally to come to fruition. And I'm actually kind of forgot about it. And I was in the car with my wife, and we're on our way home one day from running errands. I'm so tired and so hungry that I said, you know what? I don't want to have to cook when I get home. I don't want you to have to cook. Let's just pull into Del Taco right there, get some food. She said, fine. So we order food in the drive-thru, and I'm even too tired to drive home, which is like 2 blocks away, to eat there. I said, listen, I'm just going to pull over under this tree here, and we're going to eat right here. And my phone rang while I'm eating, and I wasn't going to answer it, but it was an LA call. I said, I better. Something's telling me I better. So I actually got offered the job while with a mouthful of bean and cheese burritos, sitting in my car eating Del Taco in a parking lot, and but it was a really good decision, and we're really proud of it. Everybody that I know that was involved is really proud of it, and we hope it goes to a season 2, but we just don't know right now.
Yeah, everything takes so much time, but I mean, Eli Roth, that's no mean measure there. I mean, he's well known. So I was happy to see you on there, and I said if I squint at the guy, it'll look kind of like you, so I could squint when they're yeah. When you were still like with how what I wanted to say is how do you look at the field, quote unquote, of the paranormal now? What do you think? It's changed obviously a lot. So what are your thoughts about that? TV sometimes defines, how we look at that. But what are your thoughts about where the whole thing is now post Ghost Hunters? And I mean, God's sake, Zach Bagans is still out there doing his stuff. Well, what do you think
Right?
now?
Live in the
What's
same
your
town that Zach lives in. He's got the haunted museum here in Vegas and all that. But
yeah? Have you been there?
um, no, that's the only place my wife and I have not been to. Not because we didn't want to. It's just
Hmm.
she works at an animal hospital as the office manager 6 days a week from sunup to
Mm.
sundown, and
Hmm.
life. We just
Yeah.
haven't gone down there. But you know what? I'm going to get hate mail for this, but it is what it is. Um, as far back as I can remember, there's always been drama in the paranormal field. Still is, and I fear there always will be drama.
Mm.
And so that's the disappointing part about it. It's I don't really see much change, honestly, and that's kind of sad. But at least there's still people out there like us
Yeah.
that we care about other people, we care about the field, we care about how we present ourselves, and we're not the kind of people that are trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes or misrepresent ourselves. And if I know the answer to something, I'll tell you. If I don't know the answer to something, I'll tell you I don't know the answer. And I will always, if I can't help somebody, I will always try to find somebody that can help them.
Yeah.
And what you see is what you get. I probably everybody involved in the show, Eli Roth Presents the Legion of Exorcists, probably turned it down when they first got it offered because we didn't feel that a show like that could properly depict exorcism and demonic possession and not make the church look bad. But we were presented with just when they started telling us how the show was going to look, and people are amazed that we weren't on a set. We actually filmed in a almost 200-year-old Catholic church nestled up in the hills above Old Pasadena. So they got beautiful. So people didn't thought we were on a set somewhere, but we were in this beautiful church, and we just knew the way they were gonna uh, how they were gonna present it, that it was going to be very well done, and we'd at least be proud of it, whether it was a hit or not. We
Hmm.
knew that. Well, are we going to be proud of it? And if we're going to be proud of it, and we think we're going to do some good here, let's go for it. But there's so many shows out there that God bless them. They're
Yeah.
it's entertainment. It is what it is. Even our show was entertainment, and so Hollywood is going to um, take advantage of that. Take creative liberties with some things. They actually watered down our stories a lot. There were just some things that they would talk to us and say, we just can't put that on the screen. Not that we don't want to, but
Mm.
we just, we can't put that on the screen. So I love that.
Hmm.
Maybe somebody other than Eli Roth and some other production company other than Marwar Junction Production and maybe some other channel other than the Travel would
Hmm.
have blown it way over the top.
Yeah.
Um, and that wouldn't be right either. But they were just so they really had all their I's dotted and their T's crossed and presented just such an interesting. I had never seen a show like that before, and I just knew that. Well, yeah, we got to do this. It's going to be done well, and
Yeah. They did a good job. Let me ask you one question. Did they have any weird experiences in the
oh yeah,
recreation? And yeah, yeah, I figured that. Like in
yeah.
recreating it, yeah.
And even in the church when we were filming our roundtable discussions, I experienced some things. My very first night in LA, I got attacked in the shower and got
Mm.
flipped onto my face while I was taking a shower, and this was before day one of filming. My right knee
Wow.
was the spot was like twice the size of it was normal, and I could barely walk on it. So I went and to the pharmacy downstairs, got some arthritis strength Tylenol, and I was actually ODing on it and trying not to show anybody that I was hurt because I didn't want them to send me to the quick care or to the emergency room and me miss filming or get sent home. So I didn't even want to tell them that I was hurt, but um, they had even experiences happening to me in my hotel room.
Mm.
Things didn't want that show being filmed for sure, but there
Wow.
was a lot of angelic energy in this church. I was seeing people around there, but you also had to be careful. I could tell that I didn't want to be responsible or the crew not wanting to come to work the next day because of the things that we were saying
Yeah.
or talking about, and so there was things going on for sure. I was surprised, to be honest with you. Now looking back on it, I was surprised the show actually finally got on air. I knew
Mm.
there were things that didn't want that show to make it.
Yeah. Well, anything that shines a light on them, they don't want that, and they'll do everything. Yeah, I figured stuff happened, because of bringing dredging up all the, the ideas and everything that happened and then retelling and just, that too.
And here I am the whole time worried about my wife. She couldn't come to LA with me, and
Mm.
she was she's a survivor of an extreme demonic attack that almost took her life. So
Mhm.
here I am there worrying about her here the whole time. It was it it uh it took a lot. But something told me there's a reason. There's a reason why this got laid in your lap. So just
Yeah. Well, it
see it
set you
through.
on a whole new path.
Yeah,
Father
absolutely.
Shawn. Okay, I'm gonna have to call you Father Father
And
Whittington.
it's so funny when I entered the seminary. Father Stu had just came out in the theater, and I had friends teasing me like, "Oh, you think you're going to be the next Father Stu?" Well, no, but it's just life's good right now. I'm just I'm happy and I can't wait for
Good.
next weekend. You know what's funny? St. Patrick's Day weekend, I was
Mm.
baptized under St. Patrick and confirmed under him in
Ah,
the Catholic Church as my guardian saint. So isn't it funny how, without them knowing that, this ordination lands on that weekend?
I knew that.
There's things there's powers at the pulling the strings that control all of
Well,
this stuff.
at this interesting time in history too, with so much, everybody's like, it's the end times. All of this is happening, and so it's an interesting time to join. I
Yeah.
mean, the Catholic Church needs it, but I don't know. From what I listen to, several people on YouTube and some of the stuff that's going on, and it just, you just get overloaded with it. You just have to step away from it and say, my God, let me just garden or something or do some other thing, because it's not only in the church, everything's in upheaval, all over and just and then I heard, I watched Michael Matt on Remnant TV. He has videos every Sunday, and, he said, people are worried about, just what I just said, the whole world. And then when he said to me, or he didn't say to me, but he said, I have overcome the world. That's what Christ said. I have overcome the world. And that just, it just brought tears to my eyes because it's like, yeah, you have to remind yourself, he already did it.
Yep.
He already did it. So you don't have to do too much of anything other than, try to be as much like him as you can.